Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Wow. Hi. Thank you so much. You're so kind. I appreciate it very much. Happy birthday is right. I'm 70 years old. Wow. And I have sex almost every day. Almost on Monday, almost on Tuesday, almost on... Oh, well. That's from Jack LaLanne, I must say. I stole that on his 93rd birthday, and it is my intention that on my 93rd birthday, I'll be up here somewhere doing the very same thing. So it's great to be with you. For 25 or 30 years, have been carrying certain things around with me when I speak. And I thought I'd share a couple of them. I very seldom do this, share them with you. They're in my pocket. A few years back, I was giving a speech in Phoenix, Arizona, and a gentleman came up to me and handed me something, and he said, this is a picture of a great saint that I know that you would identify with. And I hadn't heard much about him. His name was Padre Pio. Padre Pio passed away in 1968, I believe, and he handed me this card, and I had heard about him from from my friend Carolyn Mace, who's here this weekend, and speaks a lot about the saints, and he is a saint, Saint Pio. And when he was in 1918, when he was just I think 19 or 20 years old, or younger than that, he developed something called the stigmata. And for 51 years, he bled from his hands and his feet and his side every single day, very much like St. Francis back in the 12th century, who passed away at the age of 45. In the last 2 years of his life, he had to be bandaged in order to keep him from bleeding to death. Such was his commitment to living the truths that he believed were given to us by Jesus Christ. And Padre Pio was like this as well. And I took the picture, it's right here, and I've been carrying it for, I think this was in 2003. I've been carrying it with me for 7 or 8 years. And I put it in my pocket, and I said to the gentleman, I've heard so much about Padre Pio. During World War II, when the Germans were bombing Italy, and when the Americans were bombing, and bombs were being dropped all over the place, the German pilots reported they saw a man, a priest, with his arms up in the air and a cross, and they refused to drop bombs. And it was the hometown of Padre Pio who had projected himself up this, and the American pilots reported the same thing. So I was in Pennsylvania not too long ago for doing a show there called QVC. Some of you, I'm sure, are familiar with it. And I had an afternoon free, and a friend of mine, her name is Helen, she asked me if I would like to go to the Padre Pio Center in Bartow, Pennsylvania. I didn't know there was such a place. And I said I would love to. I didn't even know it existed. And it turns out that a woman who had very severe cancer of the kidney, and one of her kidneys had been removed, and the other kidney was developing cancer, and she was dying. And she was invited or encouraged to go to see Padre Pio in Italy. And when she went there, she came back after having a session with him, and he had laid his hands on her, and this is back in the 1950s, and she came back, and they did an MRI or whatever they did in those days, a test, and they found out that her kidney was actually regrowing from nothing, from a place where there had been a kidney removed. She was now growing a new kidney, and it was just unheard of in medical circles. And so what she did, and she survived and lived for several years afterwards, and she was a very wealthy lady, and she donated all of these acres and decided to create a museum and a place of reverence for Padre Pio. So I went there to spend the day and was very excited about it. It was a Saturday morning. And Helen told me that, she said there's 2 chapels there, but that's the chapel you want to go in. And when I walked in the chapel, there's a sculpture of Padre Pio. He was about this tall. And when I walked in, I just had an energy come over me like I had never experienced before in my life. And I sat in that chapel and I meditated. And I asked for his guidance because some of you may know that I have had a recent diagnosis of leukemia myself. It's not the life-threatening kind. And even if it is, my life can't be threatened because who I am is not this body, and I know that. But I thought it was 10 or 15 minutes, and I went into a meditation there, and I went in about 11, and at 2 o'clock they came to get me because 3 hours had passed in what just seemed like a few moments. And I had one of the most astounding, mystical, beautiful experiences. And this man came in to take me around and show me the grounds there and the museum and all of the different things that related to Padre Pio's life, St. Pio's life. And he said to me, he said, you know, he said several years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, he said, I was at a talk that you gave in Arizona, and I gave you a picture of Padre Pio. And I reached into my pocket and I said, you mean this one? And it's all worn, of course, and worn down. And I encourage any of you who are ever out in western Pennsylvania area, or eastern Pennsylvania, out in Bartow, to go to the Padre Pio Center. It was a really moving, healing, beautiful. And since that day, there were certain kinds of things going on inside of me that have just all dissolved and disappeared. My energy has returned, and I feel stronger and healthier and happier than I've felt in a long, long time. And Padre Pio, whoever you are, wherever you are, anyone who can have such an internal knowing about the teachings of Jesus and have it manifest in the bleeding of your hands and your feet and your side is someone that I pay attention to. I also carry with me some money and this intention. To my guides and all of those who are assisting me with my evolutionary journey on Earth, it is my intention that I be successful. It is my intention that I always be safe in all things that I do. It is my intention that I receive love and give love in all things that I do. It is my intention that I have a good time and that I be provided for with prosperity according to my needs. It is my intention that I not become overly enamored of the material world. And I've carried that intention, and those of you who are familiar with my work know that a few years back I wrote a book called The Power of Intention. Intention not being something that when we think of intention, we often think of our ego. And we think that all I have to do is set an intention and then I won't let anybody get in my way. I'm just going to do it and make it happen, and I'm going to plow through. But intention, the way I wrote about it and the way I understand it and what I just said to you, is very different. Before I sat down to write The Power of Intention, which is a very fascinating thing because I was doing yoga about 10 days ago on Maui at the Lahaina Center there, the Bikram Yoga Center. And a woman came up to me afterwards and she said, my daughter wants to thank you. She said she won a gold medal in the Olympics and 2 silver medals in the last Olympics in Vancouver. And before she went to Torino to do her very first Olympics and win a gold medal, a rare thing for a woman on the giant slalom, her name is Julie Mancuso. Many of you probably saw it if you watched the Olympics. She said she had doubts and she just didn't know if she could do it, and I gave her one thing. She said, the only thing I want you to do before you get to Torino is read The Power of Intention. And so I know I'm half owner of a gold medal for the, but I was very touched and honored by that, because that book was written at a time in my life when I was struggling. My wife and I had separated. I was hurting inside. I was not depressed, but certainly not jumping up and down every day. And it was a very hard time. And in those hard times, in those falls, we have to learn how to find a place within ourselves for the gratitude. In the Tao Te Ching, it says that built into all misfortune is good fortune, and built into all good fortune is misfortune. And that when the misfortune shows up, rather than cursing it and being upset with it and creating more misfortune for yourself, what you want to do is go into a place and find the gift in it. And when I sat down to write The Power of Intention, it came from one paragraph that I read in something that I was reading by a great teacher of mine named Carlos Castaneda. Many of you read his books when you were in college. And Castaneda, I had an opportunity to meet his wife not too long ago, who lives in Arizona, and his son as well. Castaneda wrote these words, and I carried them around with me in my pocket for a very long time before I sat down to write The Power of Intention, because I didn't want to write about intention as an ego thing. I wanted to write about intention from the perspective of a spiritual place. And this is what Castaneda said. He said, in the universe, there is an unmeasurable, indescribable force, which those who live of the source call intention. And that absolutely everything that exists in the entire cosmos is attached to intent by a connecting link. Sorcerers, meaning those who live of the source, are not only concerned with understanding and explaining that connecting link, but they are especially concerned with cleansing it of the numbing effects brought about by the concerns of living at ordinary levels of consciousness. And those words I had typed up and laminated and carried around in a card with me for a very long time, that everything that shows up here in this physical world is intended here from a field of energy. And that field of energy doesn't matter what you call it. You can call it God, soul, spirit, divine mind, the Tao, whatever you call it. It is something that all of us originated in. It is something that we all share. And for the past 6 months or so, I have been deeply involved in learning a whole new way of being for myself. This is not unusual for me. I call this my calling. Back when I turned 65 in 2005, I was called to rid myself of all of my worldly possessions. And so I gave away all of the books I had and the furniture that I had and the clothes that I had and even the place that I had lived in. I let it all go and donated it all and went off to Maui. And for 1 year, I lived, breathed, and wrote about the Tao Te Ching. There are 81 verses in the Tao Te Ching. Some call it the wisest book ever written. And for me, it was an opportunity to try to put into practice, not just by writing about it, but by living it. So I took a 365-day period from January the 1st until December the 31st. And I divided 81 verses into 365 days, and that's about 4.5 days. And for 4.5 days, I would read and study and attempt to put into practice from the moment I woke up until I went to sleep at night what I was being taught in the Tao Te Ching. It's one of the wisest books ever written. It is a book that I encourage all of you to carry with you. I had a teacher in India whose name was Nisargadatta Maharaj, and Nisargadatta used to say that you don't have to carry this book around. It was called I Am That, a book that had been written about him. He said, just carry it with you, and the energy from the book itself will provide you with whatever it is that you need in any moments that you are feeling shortchanged. And I thought, well, he's just a dumb old man. I mean, I can't believe that he would say such a thing, that you just have to carry it around with you. But I did it anyway, because I had such great faith in this, in the wisdom that he taught. And I had read I Am That anyway, which is one of the great undertakings of my life, to try to get through it and study it. And that's what I'm telling you about the Tao, living the wisdom of the Tao. Each of the 81 verses plus an affirmation are in this, and I really encourage you to just put it in your glove box, or better yet, put it in your purse, or carry it with you wherever you go, and take the wisdom that was offered to us 2,500 years ago by a great teacher named Lao Tzu. The Tao, T-A-O, means the great way. T-E, the virtue of, and Ching means book in ancient Chinese. The book of living the virtue of the great way. And I must say to you, it not only transformed my life and made me a more peaceful being, but it taught me about how to really experience God on a daily basis rather than just write about it. Would someone like a copy of this? Stand up. There it is. It's yours. Nice catch. God bless you. Carry it with you. I'll sign it for you later. So the calling that I've had recently is about something that I want to speak to you about here tonight. After doing the Tao and writing the book on the 81 verses of the Tao called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, and doing a public television special on it, which was so wonderful for me because it's a book that so few people know about. And to go on there and record it and have it play in prime time in every single city in America and Canada, and introduce this wonderful teaching, which if we began to practice it and live by it, the Dalai Lama said that if we could take every child in the country, in the world, and have them meditate for 1 hour a week on compassion, which is what the Tao Te Ching teaches, that we could eliminate all conflict on this planet in one generation, just by meditating for 1 hour a week, children from 5 years of age up, just on compassion and finding that. I meditate for 90 minutes every day without fail, and compassion is a big part of that meditation. So after that great calling and that wonderful experience and the opportunity to share that great wisdom across the country, I never know what's coming next, but I carry things with me. Another thing that I carry with me is a teacher that is in his 90s now, lives in Puttaparthi, India. His name is Satya Sai Baba. I'm sure many of you have heard of Sai Baba. This is a photograph of him at the moment of manifestation. Manifestation is that ability to move something from the world of the formless to the world of form. In the Tao Te Ching, the 40th verse of the Tao speaks about all being originates in non-being. Now hear this really well. All being, which means your being, which means all things that you see and experience in the world, originate in something called non-being. Non-being is a very difficult thing to talk about from a place of being, because it requires us to move into sort of esoteric areas. But non-being is your origination point. T.S. Eliot, the great poet, put it this way. He said, "We shall not cease from exploration. But at the end of all of our exploring will be to return to the place from which we originated and to know it for the first time." Now, I believe Eliot was speaking about, the poet was speaking about death there, that when we die, we'll return to where we originated and come to know it for the first time. I'm not speaking about death here. I'm speaking about returning to the place from which you originated and becoming that divine essence that was your origination, and recognizing the God within you and being able to do the same kinds of things that Sai Baba has been able to do, to recognize that God is not something that is external to you, but in fact, it is what you came from. So you must be like what you came from. And if you are what you came from and like what you came from, then you came from a spark of God, if you will, and you have that within you. And I've known this, and I've lectured about it, and I've spoken about it, and I've practiced it, and I've had wonderful miracles occur in my life because of it, and for other people as well. But to be able to be called to talk about it in a forum like this, and to speak about it specifically as something that you can do, well, I'm just going to share it with you tonight, because I've been doing it for the past 6 or 7 months. And when certain things start to show up in my life, it's impossible for me to ignore it. It's like deep within us, there is something called a calling. And it's in every single one of us. Years ago, I was reading the New York Times, and they did an interview with Arthur Miller. Arthur Miller, of course, is some consider the greatest playwright of the 20th century. Most of you had to read his plays when you had to. I recommend you read them now that you don't have to. The Crucible, Death of a Salesman particularly, Willie Loman's story. And Arthur Miller, at the age of 91, was asked the question by the New York Times interviewer, "Are you working on another play?" And I loved his response. He said, "I don't know, but I probably am." Now, I don't know if that resonates with you, but boy, I put the paper down and I thought about that for a long time, and I thought, he's saying something very profound in that answer. He's really saying that, that there is something bigger than all of us moving the pieces around. There is something to which we are connected, that there's a link to it, but that link has become corroded and rusted. And that if you can connect yourself back to this field of intention and clean up the link, then you have within you the capacity to be able to manifest and attract virtually anything you put your intention on or your attention on. I have been called by many people in the press over the last 40 years or so the father of motivation. I'm already the father of 8 children. I don't need to be the father of anything else. But if I'm going to be the father of something else, I wouldn't want it to be motivation. Motivation is an idea of the ego. It's an idea that says that I get an idea, I am highly motivated, and I pursue it independent of what goes on around me, and I don't let any obstacles show up. I just work hard at my motivation. Much like I just described intention. I prefer to be called the father of inspiration. Inspiration is exactly the reverse of motivation. Motivation is you get a hold of an idea and take it where you want it to go. Inspiration is an idea gets a hold of you, and it takes you where you were intended to go, before you ever even showed up here. You have a Dharma. And for those of you who have seen The Shift, how many have seen the movie The Shift? If you haven't, they're playing it Sunday right here. I'd like to be in the audience with you. I'd love to watch the film when it's shown on those great big screens and all of that, but I'll be speaking in Denver at the Mile High Church on Sunday afternoon as a favor to them on their 50th anniversary. So, but I speak a lot about Dharma. Dharma is a Sanskrit word that sort of implies or refers to the notion that within each and every one of us, there is something that we came here to be, something that we came here to do. And as I said in the book that I wrote for my teenage children, called 10 Secrets for Success and Inner Peace, that I told my children, I told my wife when I wrote this, that there have been some major ideas, some major things in my development that have carried with me and been with me since I was a young boy. And I've written them down and kept records of them. And I wrote the 10 essays on them and wanted my teenagers to know after I'm gone what it is that I lived by and how I raised you. Are there any teenagers in the room tonight? Anybody here who's a teen? Stand up. Come up here. Come on up. Any more? Wow, we got a house full of teenagers. That's great. Well, I don't have that many, but I'll have them back in the bookstore. But hold it. Stay right there. That's far enough. Hold it. Hi. What's your name? Sandra? Cassandra. Can you catch this? Would you like it? God bless you, sweetheart. It's for you. And wait, I got a couple more. 10 Secrets for Success and Inner Peace. The number 2 one on here. What's your name? Hi, Brittany. That's for you. God bless you. What's your name? Hi, Kaylee. For you. Hey, wait a minute. These guys look 35. What's happening here? Here's one for you. Nice catch. The rest of you can get them at the bookstore when you're back, okay? I want to see driver's licenses. And you know what's really beautiful about this? Because my children are constantly being asked the question, what was it like to be raised by Wayne Dyer and so many of his crazy ideas? And my 25-year-old daughter, who yesterday received her master's degree from the University of Miami in international studies, is writing a book on these 10 secrets called Don't Die with Your Music Still in You, about what it felt like and what it meant to her to have these ideas thrown at her on a regular basis. Her name's Serena Dyer. Stand up, my next best-selling author. Let me see you wave like this. Now this is, yeah. She said, if you introduce me and I wave, I have to do it like the Queen. And 10 Secrets for Success and Inner Peace. For me, the most significant one is the title of her book, Don't Die with Your Music Still in You. It came from when I was 19 years old. I was up in Northern California heading to Japan to meet my ship, the USS Ranger, which used to come right down here, right across the street from here. It's now in mothballs. And when I had to take a ship, the USS Vega, on my way across the ocean to meet that big monster ship. And in those 29 days, my Uncle Bill Volix, who taught at Hayward High School, said to me, just read this. And it was Leo Tolstoy's The Death of Ivan Ilyich. And I talk about this in the film. And Ivan Ilyich was living a life that someone else had programmed for him, trying to fulfill a dharma that had been imposed upon him by his family, particularly his wife, who was responsible for getting him this position of a judge. And as he was lying on his deathbed and holding his wife's hand, this woman that throughout the story talks about how much he despised her for him having to live out her dreams instead of his own, he looked into her eyes and looked up and said, "What if my whole life has been wrong?" And he died. And I remember being 19 years old and taking out a pad of paper and writing a note to myself. I had goosebumps over me. I said, "Dear Wayne, don't die with your music still in you. That you came here with music to play, something to do. And there is something inside of you that if you listen to it and pay attention to it, fulfill yourself, that you'll be given whatever it is that you need."